Hello, welcome to the Nerdy Folks Podcast, a conversation about the nerdy things we love and the things that matter most. My name is Matthew Seipel-Anderson.
And I am Katie Seipel-Anderson.
We are the hosts of the Nerdy Folks Podcast. We love this community, and we're glad you are with us today. And you know what, Katie? I'm glad you're with us today, even though you are far away.
Well, far away is like a different state.
It feels like you're far away, although you're not too far away.
Wisconsin isn't very far. But I am parked in a car in a different state right now. It's kind of like space-time thing here going on.
This week, we are talking about Loki and Loki's time loop. We wrapped up the Marvel Loki Season 2, and it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I don't know if you enjoyed it as much as I did, Katie, but I don't know, any thoughts about Loki Season 2?
I solidly enjoyed it. There were times when it was like so mind-boggling that it was kind of work to try to watch it. Like, I couldn't just sit back and enjoy it because I'm like, wait, what is going on right now?
Yeah.
It took a little bit more brain power to watch this movie than your typical movie.
Well said. I would agree completely. But before we get too far into our conversation about Loki, I was at Twin Cities Convention last weekend, or was it the weekend before? Anyway, the early November, and I did some great interviews with people about the topic of time and where they would go if they could time travel. And I met a guy named Ozzy. So here's my interview with Ozzy from Twin Cities Convention. I am at Twin Cities Comic-Con and talking to Ozzy. Ozzy,
Yep.
Thanks so much for hanging out. So you already gave me your answer once, but my machine gave me a hard time. So where would you time travel into the past?
Into the past, it would be the 50s.
The 50s. Okay. Just like that era?
It's the era, it's the music, it's the people. The people back then in the 50s just seem way nicer
Yeah.
than, especially now, today.
Okay, right on. How about if you had to go into the future? Where would you go in the future?
The future, at what point?
Up to you.
So if you talk about the future from me today at my age, I would say I think I would want to see at least 300 years.
Okay.
At least 300.
That'd be amazing. So much would change.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Okay, so now, what if you had to time travel somewhere, but you knew it was a one-way trip?
One-way trip. One-way trip, it'd be the 30s.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
One-way trip would be the 30s, and that's why I asked you that question earlier. The 30s are
Yeah.
standpoint to government-wise that will, if you read the comic books early or after that fact, that they was kind of against mutants and everything. It was still, but 30s, I think, would be the time where I think they would be more of what are you? Okay, I'll figure out what we can do with you, what we can.
Okay.
So between the 30s and the 50s, it was definitely different.
Okay. So that's a sweet spot.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, well, thanks for hanging out and chatting, man.
Oh, no problem.
All right, thanks, Ozzy, so much again for stopping by the booth. Katie, it's interesting that he would choose the 1950s.
I think the most interesting part of that interview was that he would choose the 30s to be able to stay, because that was a very thoughtful answer. He knew like the comics and had the idea that people in the 30s would probably be more likely to accept him and believe him and figure out what to do with him than if he had traveled and tried to stay in the 50s. But he talked about the music.
Ah, yeah.
That was kind of a cool time in the music world.
Yeah, there was some pretty hip like R&B and early rock and roll, soul, blues. Some cool things happening back in that time. Although I will say, if he chose to go 300 years in the future, who knows what he'd find. So that's pretty bold.
That might be fun to experience if you knew you'd snap back.
Yeah.
Fine. But if you kind of like were launched 300 years in the future and just left there,
Uh-huh.
it would be very interesting because there's a bit of a risk there.
So what if you and I could go time traveling together? Like we rented a car and we got into it and we started driving and the car was like, I'm actually a magical time machine. Where would you like to go? Where would we go?
Okay, so my cautious nature says, what if we get stuck there, or what if it changes something and I come back and I don't have like my family anymore, or I've missed like a whole bunch of stuff with my family. So I might be like, let's get out of this car ASAP and go find a cool restaurant to go to.
You're like opening the door and jumping out on the freeway.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know about this whole thing. I might end up missing out on some stuff in the present age that I'd really like to experience. Because relationships are pretty important.
Yeah, that's true. But you know me, I can throw caution to the wind sometimes, and maybe I beat you to the punch. I thought of a bunch of things I'd like to do. I'd like to go on a date in outer space. I'd like to go to a super high-tech spa, have a robot trim my toenails. I would like to go back in time to be a part of the first 4th of July celebration in Philadelphia. I think that'd be pretty cool to see like the fireworks and the people. And then, speaking of Loki, I thought it would be fun to attend the 1892 World's Fair in Chicago.
Ooh, that one sounds good to me. If I knew I could like come back to the present age and still be who I am right now with the family I have and stuff, I would totally do that. The World Fair one interests me most out of the ones that you said.
Okay.
I do like just a general spa though, Matt. So I don't need like a high-tech, high-tech one or something where robots are doing it. You could just take me on a date to like a normal spa. I'd be cool with that.
All right. That sounds good.
Let's try to bring the hypotheticals to reality in some way.
Oh, that's too funny. Well, I shouldn't say
joking. Pressure's on now.
Oh, man. Well, our good friends Mobius and Loki did go to the World's Fair, and it was pretty fun. I thought Loki Season 2 was super fun. It was one of my favorite things that Marvel has done recently, so I really, really enjoyed it. And it was really cool watching the finale when Loki ended up in this sort of self-imposed time loop, like kept going back to try to...
It was interesting as when before he learned to control it, he was kind of randomly going to some of these timelines, these times in history, and when he was seeing himself sometimes, and you're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But then when he was purposely doing it, it kind of seemed a little like Groundhog Day, although that wasn't like a purposeful thing in Groundhog Day. But he was re-experiencing the same stuff and just trying to tweak little things here or there to get a desired result.
Right. Yeah, I know there were definitely some purposeful parallels with Groundhog Day. Even some of the slightly dark humor, like how they had the He Who Remains character like die over and over again, and Loki's like, oh, come on, not again. And it just was sort of funny because it didn't matter because he could just keep redoing it. And interesting to me was that even during that sort of montage of time looping, you really saw Loki's character starting to develop even more than it had, I think, at points in the show. Like, I'm thinking specifically of how he was willing to sacrifice his own time, like to go back, way back, and learn all the science and engineering so that he could really help. Like, he became really dedicated to this cause.
He did, and it was interesting when Sylvie asked him if he could have any life he wanted or something to that effect. He was like, he just wanted his friends.
Yeah.
And for them to be okay. And that almost set the stage for this whole ending. It was this moment where he realized the importance of the people around him, that these great connections he had built and these friendships he had built. And it's almost like out of that was born this idea of self-sacrifice.
It's really interesting that self-sacrifice just really hits us on this deep level as people. Like when someone's willing to lay down their life for us, it's so meaningful. And of course, as Christ followers, that really resonates with us because we see that in Jesus.
Yeah, there was this moment because Loki was trying to just figure out if they could just go faster, if they could just try harder, if they could just do everything perfectly. Maybe they could fix this whole self-destruction thing that was happening. And then it came to it. He's like, oh, I actually have to change the equation.
And to bring it down to a personal, practical level, I think sometimes that can be something we could bring into our own life where we get stuck in these loops, whether it's like loops of behavior, bad choices, loops in our thinking, reliving our past over and over again. And maybe changing the equation is sometimes what we just really need to do in our personal life.
In a way, that's what Jesus did when he came and died for us. Kind of changed that equation. Through self-sacrifice, he changed the equation for us.
We sometimes try to make ourselves just better by our own efforts, and we end up kind of in these loops where we're just trying harder and failing and feeling discouraged, and then trying harder and failing and getting stuck in our old ruts. But when we look to Jesus, he can be the one that breaks in and offers us that grace and the power that can really help propel us forward. Speaking of being propelled forward, the actor who played Loki has said that this is his last outing as Loki.
Well, I suppose if the Loki character is kind of in this place where he has to hold on to these timelines, that's probably not going to make it super possible for him to do much else.
And really, his line throughout so many of these shows has been, I am burdened with glorious purpose, and I was born for a throne. And that last scene where he resurrects that throne out of the ruins of Kang's fortress, and he finally finds his purpose, but his purpose is in service. And yeah, it really brings that character to a close in a sense.
And it's a really cool, almost redemption story too for him.
Yeah.
A lot of us have had kind of a love-hate relationship with Loki because he can be so terrible. But then there's these moments where you're like, oh, but he's good. Wait a second. No, I don't think he is.
It's like he's so bad, but he's so charming.
Or he'll do these moments of good things throughout the MCU here and there.
Yeah, totally. So if you haven't seen the Loki series, I highly recommend you check it out. Loki was fun because it used lots of different things regarding time and time travel and time jumps and time slipping. And we have a couple future episodes where we're going to talk some more about time. So I'm definitely looking forward to those. If you have not subscribed to the show, I would encourage you to definitely do that. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and we will look forward to talking to you in another episode. If you want to connect with us, definitely head over to nerdyfolks.com. We would love for you to drop us an email. Check out our online store. We're adding products all the time on the store. And love you. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.